Is it, Papi? Pat Sajak? Pat Sajak? Really? The host of Wheel of Fortune? Yeah. All right, let's do it. I'm willing to go off the board here. I want to get to know people, interesting people. This guy's an American icon. Let's get to know him a little bit. Pat, is it true that you were a radio DJ in Vietnam in the late 60s?
It was the biggest market I'd ever worked in until the time. I had 500,000 American troops. I was the Good Morning Vietnam guy. And yeah, it was actually fun. If you can call a war fun, but it was good training for me. And you know, the enemy never got one of our records. I'm very proud of that.
Were you scared? I mean, you had to be scared, or you weren't scared? It was totally safe what you were doing.
Well, I mean, you know, there was terrorist stuff going on in the city, in Saigon where I was, but I wasn't out the front. And you know, it's funny. You get used to anything. I look out the window and there's these pretty streets, and I eventually lose sight of the fact that there was barbed wire, you know, and tanks going by. You just sort of you adapt to things. So after a while, it just seemed like another job in a big market.
Have you ever done Wheel of Fortune a little bit drunk?
Yes. When I first started and was much younger and could tolerate those things, we had a different show then. You didn't win money. You won fake money with which you could buy cheesy prizes. A turntable would go around, and housewives from Teaneck would say, for $100, I'll have the lamp. No, I'll have the... It was the most boring 2 minutes in television. But because we had all those prizes, we had endless time between shows. Our dinner breaks would be 2.5 hours long while they drove in new cars and boats and gazebos and stuff. So we had at NBC in Burbank, we had a place called Los Arcos across the street, which is Spanish, as you know, for the Arcos. And we go and they serve great margaritas. So we would go, Dan and I would go across and have 2 or 3 or 6, and then come and do the last shows and have trouble recognizing the alphabet. They're really good tapes to get hold of.
It sounds like you did more than one. It sounds like you did a handful loaded up on margaritas.
We did. I think the average number was cuatro.
That's pretty good right there. 4 margaritas. Pat Sajak, was the show better or worse?
I had a great time. I have no idea if the shows were any good, but no one said anything. So I guess I did okay. Now, you know, if I were to inhale the cork in a bottle of wine, I would probably keel over. I'm getting a little older for this, so we don't do that. I would be hesitant to have anything to drink now, although I'm hammered at this moment.
What's the most surprised you've been by a celebrity being awestruck by you, where you've been in the company of someone else who's famous and they have an attachment to your show and they're just super excited to meet you?
You know, that stuff happens, especially when I first started, when I wasn't kind of used to that. We were at a party years ago, Merv Griffin, who created our show and owned it for a long time. It's something he would get, and in the corner, this is how long ago it was, in the corner was a rather elderly James Stewart, the great actor. And I said to my wife, you know, that's Jimmy Stewart. You know, and I had been on the air a few years. And she said, well, you got to say hello. I said, I'm not saying hello to Jimmy Stewart. You think he's sitting in front of the TV saying, come on, big money? I can't do it. So she said, you got how many times? So, of course, so I approach him, you know, rather meekly, and I get about 2 steps and he stands up and he goes, you know, Gloria always solves the puzzles before I do. And you could have just... And I'll tell you one other quickie. I was at an event, and I'm sitting down, or before I go in, I see a limo pull up, and Lucille Ball gets out. I love Lucy. And again, all by herself, and she gets out, and it turns out she had an interest in astronomy. I didn't talk to her, I just saw her get in the crowd. So I'm sitting down, and I'm watching the show, and there's a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and it's Lucille Ball. And she says, you know what I like about you? What? She said, you're not just funny, you think funny. And I go, just kill me now.
Pat, those are great stories, but Jimmy Stewart and Lucille Ball, I mean, that's unbelievably old.
Well,
yeah.
I know, I understand they're old, but I don't, but those are people from my, Dr. Dre came up to me the other day.
Yeah.
And you know what? I found out he is not actually a doctor.
Dr. Dre is kind of old too.
Well, I don't know. I'm doing my best. Who's big? Is Kenny Rogers still big?
Has anybody in the last 50 years, anybody from the last, a little more recent than the last 50 years?
Well, no one has liked me since 1980, but before then I was really big. Well, there are certain people, there are about 9 of them left, who would be impressed by those stories.
Oh, they're great stories. I mean, Lucille Ball.
Well, I'll make up another name. Well, just tell me someone who's in show business now.
My dad loves those stories. I feel.
First of all, all the famous people on reality shows, I don't know who they are.
My father has a question for you, Pat. We appreciate the time.
Papi, I gotta say, I am so impressed because you've been on the air just a few months, and to have lost your accent completely in this time is incredible.
Go ahead, Papi. Ask him a question. Thank you. Gracias.
De nada.
Tell me what Vena White smells like.
I'm going to tell you a story. I shouldn't do this. It's not as good as you think. So, she smells great. She smells a little like Lucille Ball. So we're coming. So we're backstage waiting to come on, and again, I don't get real nervous back there. We're not tensed up. We're talking about this or that. One day, and I don't know what, she must have just picked up something to eat, or I don't know what it was, and as our names are being announced, we're about to walk out, she innocently puts her 2 fingers in front of my nose and says, "Smell this." To me, that's not a way you want to walk out into a national show.
That has to be on the show. That's not the story we were expecting. You get more questions about Vanna than you do about anything else, correct?
I do. I have a daughter who's singing country music now. Maggie's her name, Maggie Sajak, and I'm going to go. Cool. I joke with her. I'm going to go from being the guy who works with Vanna White to the guy who's Maggie Sajak's father. So that's it. But I'm fine with that. She's gotten a lot of, but she's a big part of the show's success. People love her, and she's a great gal and a sweetheart to work with. And I'm fine. I'm happy to play second or third fiddle, and as long as they keep the checks coming.
Third fiddle, you're third to the wheel.
Yeah.
It's Van to the wheel, and then you. Pat, thank you so much. That was delightful.
Thank you, Danny. Good to be with you. Bye-bye.
Gracias. Bye. Coming